From claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt.
EWTN Radio presents The Miracle Hunter with Michael O'Neill.
Welcome to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill on The Miracle Hunter. Well, a big week here in our Catholic Church, our first American Pope. This is absolutely amazing. And being a Chicago guy and a White Sox fan at that, seeing Pope Leo from the south side of Chicago rising to become Pope was absolutely a fascinating development. And I think that for a lot of Americans, especially when we were watching that live stream or watching on television that broadcast of the white smoke and then waiting patiently, I think that a lot of people were wondering, of course, who would be the next pope. And then when they spoke in Latin, I was able to translate the Latin, and I heard the name Robert Prevost. And I know a lot of people, when they heard a Chicago Cardinal, they might have been thinking about another Chicago Cardinal, but Prevost was a name that I had actually heard of, because when I went to Rome, after Mass one day, I was walking in the streets of Rome, and the priests from the Mass came up, and they said hello, and they asked where I was from, and when I said Chicago, they said, "Did you know that the next pope will be from Chicago?" And I laughed, and I said, "I don't think there'll ever be an American pope," but was I ever wrong? And the week after or so, I was actually filming with the Augustinians at Villanova. And at lunch, I was talking to all of them, and they were mentioning, did you know that we have somebody up for the papacy, a papabile, somebody who might be pope. And I had known the name because it was told to me in Rome. And they said, we think there's a chance. And I laughed again to myself, and I said, I don't know there'll ever be an American pope. But sure enough, here we are, Pope Leo XIV. Absolutely amazing developments, and I was so excited to be in Rome for that lead up to that, and what an amazing time in our church. And on this week's show, we're going to be talking a little bit about Pope Leo when we talk about the place of Genazzano, that place in Italy where the Mother of Good Counsel, a miraculous icon, is housed, and that was the site of the very first place that Pope Leo went on pilgrimage as Pope. And we'll be joined today by Julia Carlandra-Lineberg from the St. Pio Foundation. She'll be talking to us about the history of Genazzano and what makes that image miraculous. And later in the show, we'll be talking with Elizabeth Ficocelli, author of Lourdes, Fount of Faith, Hope, and Charity, about the 72nd Lourdes miracle that was recently announced. And check out my series on EWTN, They Might Be Saints, where we look at all the Americans on the path to sainthood. And in this week's show, airing on May 20th, we'll be looking at the story of Rhoda Wise. She is the mystic from Canton, Ohio, known to have the stigmata, and perhaps most notably, she is credited with the intercession, the healing of Rita Rizzo, the Italian girl who went on to become EWTN's Mother Angelica. So check that one out on Tuesday, May 20th, They Might Be Saints. And also you can go to EWTN to watch my episode of Monte Cassino of my Explore series. I travel there. That is the site, of course, of St. Benedict of Nursia. And, of course, we look at his life in a big way on Saturday, May 17th at 5 p.m. Central Time, the story of the founder of the Benedictine Order. And for those people who want to go beyond just watching the programs of Explore on EWTN, and you'd like to see how those shows are made, or perhaps go to the places where those shows are filmed, you can join me on a Jubilee Year pilgrimage to Milan, Turin, Florence, and Rome, and we'll be going for the canonization of Pier Giorgio Frassati. And there are some people who are saying that perhaps the canonization of Carlo Acutis, which was postponed due to the funeral of Pope Francis, will also be connected to this canonization. So that'll be July 28th through August 4th, and this will be a Jubilee Year pilgrimage, and it will be a chance to see our new Pope, Pope Leo, for the very first time. But we'll be going to the places of saints and miracles like we always do, and we'll see Marian apparition sites and visit the Duomo in Milan. We'll visit Turin to see the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, where the Shroud of Turin is held, and we'll walk in the footsteps of Pier Giorgio Frassati and see the place where St. John Bosco had his famous visions. And we'll go to Florence to see all the works of the many great artists there. and visit the David and the site of the apparition of Mary to the 7 holy founders of the Servites. And we'll finish up in Rome to see the many incredible sights around the Vatican, ending with the canonization of one of the great modern saints, that's Pier Giorgio Frassati. And like I mentioned, I think there is some good chance that it will also be the canonization of Carlo Acutis as well. So fingers crossed for that one. So check that one out. Go to pilgrimages.com/miraclehunter to find out and to find out more and to sign up. Later in the show, we're going to be looking at the might-be saint of the day, Blessed Maria Messina Antonia, who lived in Italy from 1919 to 1935. The 365 Days with Mary project is the Immaculate Conception from Marpingen in Germany in 1876. And the question of the week, has Pope Leo ever been to Medjugorje before he was Pope? I'll try to answer that one. And the miracle of the day, it's not a miracle, but we'll tell you what happened at the Vatican on May 17th of last year. Let's take a look at the miracle news. Each week I report on the miracles happening all around the world and those things that relate to miracles. And this was really big news, or this report is a big report. We have to wait to see if this really does happen, of course, but this is being reported in various news places around the internet right now, that the Vatican has confirmed the miraculous appearance of Christ's face on a consecrated host during a Mass in the Archdiocese of Thalassery in India, 12 years after its occurrence. And so there's been a report that Archbishop Mar Joseph Pamplani has announced at the Villancanour Church, the site of the 2013 miracle, that the Vatican has officially recognized the event as a miracle. And according to photos and reports, the face of Christ appeared on the host during consecration on November 15, 2013, when Father Thomas Pittacalli was offering Mass, and the host was sent to the Archdiocese for observation and safekeeping. And from September 2018 to January 2020, the Archdiocese sent the host back to the church for public veneration. And the Syro-Malabar Church's Theological Commission, which investigated the event, found strong theological grounds supporting that it was indeed a Eucharistic miracle. On January 2020, the host was taken to the Syro-Malabar headquarters in Catcanad and presented to the nuncio, Archbishop Giambattista Disquatro. And the Archbishop Pamplani told the congregation that the Holy See found that the miracle deepened the faith in the real presence, and thus permitted the faithful to honor the host in the same way that the faithful honor the Blessed Sacrament. And the Archbishop added that the reality of the true presence is a doctrine of the Catholic faith and does not depend on miraculous appearances. The key piece to this whole puzzle, again, this is just a report that's been being made, and I'd like to wait for this, but this is really catching fire on the internet, and I thought I would mention it. The official proclamation will take place on May 31st at Villancanour Church, and Pope Leo XIV's representatives in India will preside over the Mass. So we'll see if that does indeed happen, but that is the miracle news of the day. Let's take a look at Catholic Pub Trivia. We do this every week where we ask a trivia question and give out a prize to an emailer who writes in the fastest with the correct answer. And last week we had an interesting question. We were talking about St. Januarius a little bit, and we asked the question, what is the name of any of the saints that exude manna or oil in Italy? And the saint whose body is famously known to exude a mysterious manna or oil in Italy is St. Nicholas, also known as Nicholas of Myra. This phenomena occurs in Bari in Italy, where his relics are housed in the Basilica of San Nicola. And the clear watery liquid exudes from his tomb is called the manna of St. Nicholas, collected annually on May 9th. And it's considered to have healing properties and highly venerated by both Roman Catholics and Eastern Orthodox Christians. And there's another saint whose body exudes oil, and that's in Amalfi, and the Amalfi Coast, and that's St. Andrew the Apostle. And this is housed in the Amalfi Cathedral, the Domo de Amalfi, and it houses the major relics of St. Andrew, including parts of his bones. And a miraculous substance called the manna of St. Andrew is said to exude from his tomb there. And the manna appears as a clear, oily liquid and believed by the faithful to have healing properties. And it's collected and distributed to pilgrims, particularly on St. Andrew's feast days, November 30th and June 27th. And so that is the answer to this week's question about saints' bodies exuding oil. For this week's question, we have a question about Pope Leo XIV. We're learning now that he's sort of named after his predecessor, Pope Leo XIII, who wrote the encyclical Rerum Novarum, and he chose this name because of he's looking to be present to the world during this time of artificial intelligence and give the church direction in this time. So, Rerum Novarum of Pope Leo XIII was what he connected to in choosing this name. So the trivia question for this week, Leo XIV, that's a big Roman numeral after that name, but which pope has the largest Roman numeral after his name? We've got Benedicts and Johns and Leos and others throughout history with big Roman numerals, but the question for this week, which pope has the largest Roman numeral at the end of his name? If you think you know that answer, want to win the prize, the image of the faces of Mary, send me an email to miraclehunter@EWTN.com, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be speaking with Julia Carlandra-Lineberg about Genazzano, the site of the miraculous icon visited by the first pilgrimage of Pope Leo XIV. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Just a week ago, I was actually at Villanova, and I was with the Augustinians. We were filming a new episode of They Might Be Saints about Father Bill Atkinson. And that was interesting for its own reasons, of course, because our new pope has that connection to Villanova University, being a graduate, and also is from the Augustinian order. So it was very interesting to be there before the papal election to learn a little bit more about this Robert Prevost, who went on to become Pope Leo. And so, but one of the things that was so interesting being around the property there and the place where we filmed was that there was one Marian icon that seemed to be repeated all over the house, and that was Our Lady of Good Counsel from Genazzano. And I recognized it because it is somewhat unique. The image of Jesus and Mary is different than any other in the world, you might say. And I have been to that place of Genazzano in Italy. And the reason I mention it, of course, is because we see in the very earliest days of his pontificate, Pope Leo XIV has opted to go to make a pilgrimage to that Marian shrine there in Genazzano in Italy, and to visit that icon of our Mother of Good Counsel. And we're so excited today to speak with Julia Carlandra-Lineberg about this incredible place of pilgrimage and miracles. Welcome back to the program today, Julia.
Thank you, Michael. It's always wonderful to be with you.
Well, it's so great to connect again. And I think this was really interesting news that the Pope obviously could have gone anywhere on his very first week as far as Marian shrines and other places of interest, but he chose Genazzano. What do you see as the reason why Pope Francis or Pope Leo went there?
I just think, as you had mentioned earlier, being an Augustinian, and that this shrine, this beautiful shrine to Our Blessed Lady, was entrusted to the care of the Augustinians since the mid-14th century and has remained under their care for all of these years until the present day. And Pope Leo XIII, who we know Leo XIV took his name from that and continues that line. He was born very close to Genazzano, and since his youth, he fostered in his heart a great devotion to Our Blessed Lady under that title of Good Counsel, and he never had the opportunity in his pontificate, Pope Leo XIII, to travel there. Although he did have the privilege as sovereign pontiff to confer the title of minor basilica upon the shrine in Genazzano, and I do think that Pope Leo XIV made that pilgrimage not only because it's one of the most beautiful Augustinian shrines, but he did so to honor Pope Leo XIII.
Absolutely. We're talking today with Julia Carlandra-Lineberg from the St. Pio Foundation, and she's joining us today to talk about Genazzano, one of the incredible places of pilgrimage that she's led people on. I've been there myself. It's an absolutely beautiful place to visit. And when we talk about the icon, we of course refer to it as a miraculous icon. What is it about the Genazzano image, Our Lady of Good Counsel, or Mother of Good Counsel, that is considered miraculous?
Well, I know one of the most fascinating things about this miraculous image was its arrival in Genazzano, because it had previously been painted as a mural on the wall of a church in Albania. But during this terrible war between the Albanians and I think it was the Ottoman Turks, somewhere in the mid-15th century, the image removed itself and traveled on this cloud of mist across the sea, across the land, until it came to rest in Genazzano. And it didn't do so in the quiet, if you will. It didn't do so. This miraculous image arrived on a day when all of Genazzano was celebrating the national feast day of St. Mark, who was the patron of all of Italy, and that was in April. So all of these townsfolk saw this mystic cloud coming from the heavens and going into the church, and when they arrived into the church, everyone following the cloud, this image that might be maybe 15 inches square rested itself on a very narrow ledge in the church, and that's where it remains, in the exact same position to this very day.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing, and it's on such an eggshell thin slice of plaster. I guess it was when it removed itself or was removed from the wall. That's the plaster of the wall. So it's the thinnest image anybody will ever see. And as far as I know, some people have tried to pass a thread or a wire behind it on the ledge there. It's that thin. And of course, this has been an image that has been honored by the church and by popes have visited there, etc. This is a very important image. If you were to describe the style of that image of Our Lady and the Christ Child, how would you describe it?
Well, the mural was painted around the 12th century, and it's absolutely beautiful in the vivid colors of the 12th century, and it also is a bit, I guess, ordained with gold, placed with some gold leaf, and it is a very classic portrait, more of a portrait than it is an icon. So it was done by Western artists more so than the Eastern artists, although iconography was greatly used in the Byzantine era. But this miraculous image that has been in this shrine for all these years was studied. So it wasn't as though the Pope or the bishops of that region just took it, cloud came. They sent a papal commission to study. And the papal commission interviewed many people, including Albanian refugees, that testified that image was in Albania before they came to Italy. And the papal commission did go to Albania and made many studies, and they did see that the image fits exactly in the larger mural in Albania. So Our Blessed Lady wanted this particular image to be honored, and shortly after it arrived in Genazzano, there were hundreds of miracles that had taken place and had been confirmed. And I understand to this very day Many miracles continue to be attributed to her, and that's why there is great devotion amongst the Holy Father. You know that Pope John Paul II himself visited there, and he prayed before her and composed a prayer, and that was the prayer that Pope Leo XIV recited before this image of our Blessed Lady. So he gave honor also to his predecessors.
Wonderful. We've been talking today with Julia Carlandra-Lineberg from the St. Pio Foundation about the miraculous icon found at Genazzano that was venerated by Pope Leo XIV this past week. This was his perhaps first pilgrimage as Pope, or trip as Pope, and he went to venerate that Augustinian icon. And so that was an important thing, a noteworthy thing that he did in his very first week. And as we go forward, Julia, we have this new Pope, and he's clearly has a Marian devotion. In his very first words, standing on the balcony, he invoked the Blessed Mother on numerous occasions, even referencing Our Lady of Pompeii and other ways to recognize and reference the Virgin Mary. What can we take away from these very early days, would you say, of Pope Leo XIV with his devotion to Mary and his visit to Genazzano?
Well, I kind of believe that as even his predecessors have said, we are living in the era of Mary, of our Blessed Lady. The Rosary is an extremely important part of the prayer life of many of our beloved sacred pontiffs. So I'm kind of thinking that he is also alluding to the fact that he is very Marian-oriented, and that we should also follow his example with devotion, a tender devotion to our Blessed Lady. She is the Mother of God and our Mother, as well as Mother of the Church. And I do believe that that is what the emphasis was by these sovereign pontiffs, that she is Mater Ecclesia, Mother of the Church, and that we must rely on her tender maternal care for our salvation.
Very well put. Well, we're so grateful to you, Julia Carlandra-Lineberg, for joining us today to talk to us about Genazzano, and I know that you are with the St. Pio Foundation there in New York. Tell us a little bit where people can find out more about your foundation and what it's known for.
Oh, well, they can go right onto the website, www.stpiofoundation.org, and it lists all the activities. Currently, our founder, Luciano La Monarca, has been creating, in union with the bishops of various cities, chapels to St. Pio, wherein he is housing a relic of St. Pio, because there's so many places in the United States where people will never have an opportunity to either go to Italy in San Giovanni Rotondo or travel to any of the other shrines of Padre Pio. But here in their local churches, there had been a request from Kansas, a request from Texas, a request from Florida, and these are the requests from the bishops of various dioceses. And Luciano is working now to get the relics into these various dioceses in the United States, just for the encouragement and the edification of the local churches there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Julia Carlandra-Lineberg, for joining us from the St. Pio Foundation, talking to us about Genazzano and our new Pope. Thank you so much for being with us on the program today.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. You do a marvelous job, Michael, and you bring us to these places, and that is such a privilege. Thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Julia. Great to be with you today. And that was Julia Carlandra-Lineberg from the St. Pio Foundation. Check that one out. You can Google that one and find out more. And check out my series of Explore with the Miracle Hunter, the episode on Genazzano, to find more about this incredible, miraculous image. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be looking at the question of the week. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. Hey, I love getting your questions. People write in from around the world with questions about miracles happening in today's world and those that have happened centuries ago. And I love getting the email questions. I have the strangest inbox in America, I think, but I also love getting the questions in person when I give a talk at a church, a shrine, or a conference. I usually talk for about 45 minutes about Eucharistic miracles or Marian apparitions or how the church investigates the supernatural. But then afterwards, I open it up to questions, and I love to hear what people are thinking about. And people can send me an email. They can connect to me through my website, miraclehunter.com, if they go to the Contact tab and send me a message that way. And maybe I'll be speaking at a message or at a parish in your area sometime soon. And so the question for this week is a good one. And I don't necessarily know the answer, unfortunately. But the question is, Dear Miracle Hunter, has the new Pope been to Medjugorje? Thank you, John. Well, I've gotten this question over and over in recent days. People are curious about where the Pope stands on many things, of course, perhaps his orientation towards miracles in general, but specifically towards Medjugorje, which is most recently, this past year, 2024, been given an approval of sorts from Rome, or at least a declaration of nihil obstat, nothing stands in the way, and a recommendation of for faith expression or for people visiting there with no problems. And so the real question is, as Pope Leo XIV, perhaps, of course, before he's been Pope, he's just been on the job for a week, but as a cardinal or a priest, did he ever visit Medjugorje? And I've done some research on this, and there seems to be conflicting reports. Some sources are saying yes, and other sources are saying no. And so I know this is sort of a silly thing to ask a question and not be able to give a good answer, but we're going to have to wait and find out about the Pope's connection to Medjugorje to see if he's been there himself or if he has any opinions on the matter. But I'll be reporting back to that one on that one. But you can send me an email to questions@miraclehunter.com and send me your question, and maybe I'll be answering your question on the air next week. Let's take a look at the 365 Days with Mary project. We do this every week where we talk about the Marian devotion of the day as it lines up exactly to the day's date. And we all know Fatima, May 13th, or Lourdes, February 11th, or Guadalupe, December 12th. But believe it or not, on every single day of the calendar year, there's a different Marian devotion that lines up. And it might be the occasion of a miracle or a feast day, or it might be the building of a basilica, or other way that Mary is honored on that particular day. But for every day, there's a different Marian devotion from somewhere in the world. So for today's day, we've got Mary referred to as the Immaculate Conception in Marpingen in Germany in the year 1876. And the story goes that on July 3rd, 1876, one day after the coronation of the Lord's image of the Immaculate Conception, the Virgin Mary was said to appear on the top of a tree to three children, Catherine Hubertus, Margaret Kuntz, and Susanna Leist. 3 days later, 5 adults also claimed to see her. A healing spring was found in the forest with miraculous curative powers. The Virgin identified herself as the Immaculate Conception and urged them to pray with faith and turn from sin. These facts were published in newspapers all over Germany and caused a massive influx of pilgrims, which greatly worried the Prussian parliament to imprison the children. On May 17, 1999, a new set of apparitions were claimed by 3 more children in Marpingen. And that is the 365 Days with Mary, Marian Devotion of the Day, the Immaculate Conception from Marpingen in Germany. And the miracle of the day, we do this every week where we find a miracle at some point in Christian history as it connects to the day's date. But this isn't quite a miracle, but on May 17th of last year, the Vatican updated its norms to authenticate visions of Mary, weeping statues, and stigmata. And the doctrinal office issued a revised set of norms for discerning apparitions and other supernatural phenomena, updating a set of guidelines first issued in 1978. That was quite a long-in-the-tooth document that hadn't been updated for a long time. So, minor miracle that they came out with something under Pope Francis's pontificate, but they did, and that was May 17th of 2024. And all the rules are changed now, including the Vatican no longer gives approval to an apparition, calling it supernatural. The highest level of approval that's given is that of nihil obstat. Nothing stands in the way. So that was the big news from 1 year ago today. Let's take a look at the sainthood news. Each week we talk about those people on the path to sainthood. Of course, in order for a saint to be declared, in order for a canonization to occur, there needs to be a pope. And we have a brand new pope, Pope Leo XIV. So he hasn't quite yet had the opportunity to sit down with the dicastery for the cause of saints to promulgate any decrees regarding any of the venerables, blesseds, or saints that are waiting in queue. So we will find out shortly about the new saints coming up, and most interestingly, to me at least, will be the canonization of Carlo Acutis. That has not yet been rescheduled. It was postponed due to the death and funeral of Pope Francis, and we're just waiting now to find out when that date is going to be. Fingers crossed. I'm hoping that it's combined with the Pier Giorgio Frassati canonization, which I will be there for in Italy at the end of July. And let's take a look at the might-be saint of the day. For today's day, we've got Blessed Antonio Messina from Italy, who lived from 1919 to 1935. She was born on June 21st, 1990, in Sardinia in Italy. She was the second of 10 children born to a peasant family, and she received only 4 years of school, quitting to take over the housekeeping from her mother, Grazia, who was bedridden with a heart condition, and she joined Catholic Action at age 10. She became an active and lively member and recruiter. At age 16, while gathering wood for home, she was beaten and murdered by a teenage would-be rapist, fighting him off to her last breath, and she's considered a martyr to purity. And she died on May 17th, 1935, in Nuoro in Italy. She was declared blessed by Pope John Paul II in a decree of martyrdom on May 8th, 1987, and on October 4th, 1987, she was made a saint by Pope John Paul II in Rome. And that's today's might-be saint of the day, Blessed Antonio Messina from Italy. And check out They Might Be Saints this week. Each week airs another episode related to those on the path to sainthood from the United States. And for this week's show on Tuesday, May 20th, will be the episode about Rhoda Wise. She's the mystic from Canton, Ohio, perhaps famous for stigmata and other miracles, but the biggest one, or the most noteworthy one for the EWTN audience, of course, relates to Rita Rizzo. It was an Italian girl who had a stomach ailment and was cured through the intercession of Rhoda Wise. And, of course, Rita Rizzo went on to become EWTN's foundress, Mother Angelica. So that is a big name for the EWTN audience. We need to take a short break, but when we come back, we're going to be talking with Elizabeth Ficocelli, author of Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity, about the 72nd Lourdes miracle. Stay with us for that.
Now, back to the Miracle Hunter on EWTN. Here's Michael O'Neill.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Miracle Hunter radio show on EWTN Radio. This is Michael O'Neill. I'm the Miracle Hunter. As I've reported on this show, I was recently in Rome for Easter and was there for the planned canonization of Carlo Acutis. But of course, that didn't happen. That got postponed with the death and funeral of Pope Francis. And during that week, the news broke about a new Lourdes miracle, the 72nd, and that's the second in the course of a year after a long wait from the previous one, number 70. But there was a new one that was announced, Antonietta Rocco, and she suffered from primary lateral sclerosis and cured in 2009 during a pilgrimage to Lourdes. Truly amazing. Anytime we see a miracle coming out of Lourdes, there have been 7,000 or 8,000 that have been reported to that medical commission there. But any time that they announce with certainty that they have, in fact, a definitive miracle, it is such exciting news. Well, we're so excited today to be joined by one of our favorite guests, and that's Elizabeth Ficocelli. She's the author of Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity, to talk to us about this brand new miracle. Welcome back to the program, Elizabeth.
Hi, Michael. Great to be here, and welcome back from Rome.
Thanks. It's good to be back. And this was exciting news that came up. I think that anytime Lourdes, there's so many miracles that are claimed at Lourdes, and perhaps miracles that don't quite pass the full investigation of Lourdes, thousands of cures that have been reported over the years. But here's one, a very modern one that received the full approval of the commission and the bishop. Tell us a little bit about the illness of this Antonietta Rocco and what she was cured from.
Yes, Antonietta is from Basilicata, Italy, and she was suffering. Her illness started in around 2004. She started experiencing severe headache attacks, cramping in her body, and just a general lack of energy, and began even a little bit of walking difficulties. And it was an illness that seemed to progress. The following year, 2005, she starts to get worse. She starts to begin to have walking difficulties. And even now she starts to have difficulties swallowing and speech problems. So it's her body is shutting down. The following year, 2006, she went to be checked out, and they determined she had primary lateral sclerosis, also known as PLS. And what PLS is, it's a disease of the motor neurons, the nerve cells that are in our brains that affect our body's movement. It controls our movement. So in her case, the breakdown of the nerve cells in her PLS was causing all these weaknesses in the muscles and in her face, her speech, her tongue, and eventually it prohibits the patient from walking, which was her case. They end up in a wheelchair. So in 2008, with her conditioning continue to worsen, her breathing becoming more and more labored, and her weakness really exacerbating on her left side, she decided to plan a trip to Lourdes to make a pilgrimage and to seek a healing. And she made that pilgrimage in 2009. And when she was there, she went into the baths, as typical of the pilgrims at Lourdes. And what she describes later in experiencing in the baths was this kind of unusual feeling of what she said was like well-being and a sense that she was able to move independently and perhaps even walk. Not that she was doing it then and there, but it was like a sense of well-being and a restoration in her body. And so later that year, August and September of 2009, she went for a series of checkups because she was rapidly recovering from all these symptoms. And they did diagnose her with PLS, but her symptoms disappeared. So it was quite extraordinary to happen so rapidly.
Amazing. And when we talk about the miracles of Lourdes, there haven't been all that many that have received this level of approval. I think there's been 7,000 or 8,000 that have been reported or looked at over the years, but a much smaller number has actually been approved.
That's correct. So Antonietta decided to take her cause to Lourdes, and this is the beginning of the process. So she presented herself to the Office of Medical Observations there, and her case was opened, and investigations began. So we're talking 2010, okay, and we're now in 2025. So we see this is a long and laborious process. But what they want to make sure is that in a case like Antonietta, that these cures are genuine, they're lasting, they're complete, they're not caused by other reasons. And so it involves this patient going through the test, coming back repeated times, and that's what Antonietta did. She was being assessed by 2013, so somewhere a couple years into the process. The neurology department of the University of Milan, again, they confirm her diagnosis, but we're watching these symptoms and they are not coming back. So this is like legitimate science, modern medicine tracking this woman. And as you said, Michael, there's over 7,000 cases of people with these reported extraordinary claims that haven't quite made it over the finish line. But in Antonia's case, at least from the medical bureau's perspective, she went through all these tests, and then finally this past November of 2024, the international medical community of Lourdes voted on her case, and the majority voted that, yes, this was a medically inexplicable a cure, a miracle. They could not explain why her symptoms had disappeared and not come back. But as you know, and I know, Michael, that's only the first step. Of course, in the actual declaration of a miracle, the second step is very important, and that is the approval of the bishop. And in her case, this information had to get to her bishop of the Diocese of Tursi-Langanegro, and that bishop approved this information. So on April 16th, which of course is a feast day of St. Bernadette there at Lourdes, the miracle was announced publicly. So very exciting. I'm sure she was there because this is a modern case, and I've seen a picture of her beautiful smiling face standing next to her husband, not in a wheelchair anymore. So very, very exciting.
Absolutely amazing. We've been talking today with Elizabeth Ficocelli, author of Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity, about this brand new 72nd Lourdes miracle. And I think you mentioned that maybe it was 2013 when she had a complete. She was completely healed. Why is there such a long wait? Now it's 2025. Why so many years in between her full recovery and this declaration of the miracle?
Yeah, because as I mentioned earlier, what they're trying to do is to isolate what has happened. And so are these symptoms that have disappeared, is this sudden, inexplainable? Is it something that she began another therapy or another medication or is doing something different? That wasn't the case with her. They want to make sure it's a complete cure, that it wasn't just a temporary, a psychosomatic thing. Our minds are very powerful, right? But it wasn't in her case. When her symptoms disappeared rapidly in just those few couple months after her pilgrimage, they failed to return. And so that was consistent throughout. But again, it's just a slow, methodical process, because they want to make sure that when they put that final stamp that this is an authentic miracle of Lourdes, that this is exactly that, an authentic miracle with no other possible explanation.
Amazing. And when we talk about medical treatment, I think that everybody in such a situation with PLS or other major disease like this would be receiving some treatment. How does it work related to treatment? If there is treatment of some sort, the Church won't recognize it if the treatment has any relationship to the cure. Do we know anything about this case of any treatments that she was undergoing?
I don't know. I'm going to presume she may have been taking some things maybe for some symptom relief, but I really don't know the details. That did not come up in my research, whether she had other procedures done. But I'm going to venture to guess by the result of the medical bureau and the time they took in investigating her case, that they are sure that this came about through the intercession of Our Lady at Lourdes back in 2009.
Yeah, absolutely amazing. Anytime there's some sort of a medical treatment that relates to the cure, they'll swat that one out and give it the red stamp and kick it out. But those cases where the medical treatment has not worked or there's been none applied, those are the cases they consider. So this has got to be one of those types of cases. And so as we walk away from this one, 72nd Miracle of Lourdes, you wrote the book, Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity. Why does, in our minds or in reality, Lourdes stand alone as this incredible place of miracles that so many people travel to from all over the world?
Right. Well, the thing that struck me when I went there back in my pilgrimage was the fact that, as the bishop at the time said to me in an interview, that this is not a museum, but it's a living sanctuary. It's where people continue to find hope and healing. And again, now, the far majority of people aren't going to walk away cured from cancer, but what they find there is help with the crosses they bear. They go there and they realize they're not the only ones suffering. There's plenty of people that are visibly suffering, let alone people who are invisibly suffering, right? We don't know hearts and minds of people. It's just a place that people can find collective strength for their journey. We're all on a journey. None of us are promised a life without suffering, but we come out restored in terms of our faith, our hope, and with kind of a new lease on life to carry the cross in the way that God has called us to, and, kind of prioritize things in our life, and to walk forward with that faith, that childlike faith that Bernadette had back in the apparitions in the 1800s, and try to emulate her faith, her hope, and her charity to others. So it's a beautiful place. Miracles continue to happen, spiritual miracles, spiritual conversions, all kinds of things. And so it's just a place that will probably forever continue to draw people from all over the world to experience something very, very special and unique.
Very well put. Well, we're so grateful to you, Elizabeth Ficocelli, author of Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity, for joining us on this show to talk about this new 70-second miracle at Lourdes. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for joining us on today's program.
Thanks, Michael, and God bless you.
God bless. That was Elizabeth Ficocelli. Check out her book, Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity. You can go to elizabethficocelli.com for more information on her work and this book. And that's all the time we have for today's show. If you missed any of this episode or want to catch up on past episodes, you can go to EWTN.com/radio. Check out the audio archives or download the free EWTN app. I'd like to thank our guest today, Julia Carlandra-Lineberg, for talking to us about the miraculous icon at Genazzano, visited by Pope Leo XIV, and also Elizabeth Ficocelli, author of Lourdes, Font of Faith, Hope, and Charity, for discussing this brand new 70-second Lourdes miracle. Check out my series, Explore with the Miracle Hunter, coming up on Saturday, May 17th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Monte Cassino. I'll be exploring the breathtaking monastery at Monte Cassino. That'll be the site of an exploration of the life of St. Benedict of Nursia, creator of the Benedictine rule and inspiration for the St. Benedict Medal. For those people who want to go beyond watching the show but want to join a pilgrimage, you can join me on a Jubilee Year pilgrimage July 28th through August 3rd. That's Rome, Milan, Florence, and Turin. We'll see the Marian apparition sites and visit the Duomo in Milan. We'll visit Turin to see the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist, where the Shroud of Turin is held, walk in the footsteps of Pier Giorgio Frassati, and see where St. John Bosco had his famous visions. We'll go to Florence, to the home of many great artists, and we'll see Michelangelo's David, as well as the apparition site of Mary to the 7 holy founders of the Servites. And we'll finish up in Rome to see the many incredible sites around the Vatican, ending with the canonization of one of the great modern saints, Pier Giorgio Frassati, and fingers crossed, Carlo Acutis' canonization will be combined with that one. Stay tuned for that, and you can find out more and sign up at pilgrimages.com/Miracle Hunter. This will be my first chance to see the brand new Pope, the Chicago Pope, Pope Leo XIV. And I'd like to thank you for joining me today on Miracle Hunter, where from claims of healings and visions to the world's most inexplicable events, whether you're a believer or a skeptic, the truth is always worth the hunt. Talk to you next week.